Hello, everyone, and welcome to Qobuz Live on Thursday. I'm glad you're here. We've got a super special show today. We've got Enno Vandermeer from Roon, and we're going to be talking all things Roon today. So before we get started, I'll take you a little bit through Qobuz and what we're all about. Hi, I'm David Solomon. I'm the Chief High-Res Music Evangelist for Qobuz. I think I might have the coolest job in the world because I get to talk about music all the time and Qobuz and how people, really get to enjoy their music. Today's show really enhances that, so I'm really looking forward to the discussion with Enno. Before we get started, I'll tell you a little bit about Qobuz. We are a high-res music site. We offer FLAC files of up to 24/192 studio quality. It's absolutely an amazing service, and we've got about 60 million tunes on there right now, and that's growing. We were up from 40 million when we started just not that long ago. So as you can see, we're really catching up with almost everybody. We'll really be caught up with everybody and pretty much are right now. The things that we do have on Qobuz that you won't find in a lot of places are some of the eclectic jazz and classical that we've got, because that's the way the company started. So that's a little bit about what we've got on the service. The service runs about $15 a month if you're paying monthly. And if you pay annually, it runs down to about $12.50, which has opened up. You would not believe the number of people that were, I guess I'll call them pre-audiophiles or or something like that. But a lot of people from the other services are coming over now because we're within sort of just a stone's throw from those other services, especially at $12.50 a month. You can get full 24/192 files as they're available. That's pretty amazing. One of the really cool things about what we've been getting lately is all of the high res. The high res is amazing because most of the catalog that we're getting now from the labels are almost all high res. It's like 80%. It started out like, I don't know, 50 or 60%. Then I started seeing it grow to about 70. And now you look at all of the new releases and almost there's just a large number of those things, if not the lion's share, are all in high res or coming in high res right now. We've also got a family plan that enables up to 6 accounts in your family, which is really cool. So if you do have family members that are on something like Spotify or one of the lower res services and you wanted to see how this sounds, this is a perfect time to do it. One of the really cool things is to talk to somebody about 6 months after they've been on Qobuz, and then have them go back to a lesser service and see if they can tell the difference, because at that point it's much easier to fill and hear what you've been missing or what you've had. The family subscriptions run $25 per month. And what is that, like $5 or $6 per person? So I mean, high res is just getting to a point that almost everyone can afford it if they know the difference. So the other program that we've got in is a Sublime program. If you're one that buys music, you cannot buy music, high resolution music, cheaper than you can buy if you have a Sublime membership. In fact, if you buy like 3 albums per month, if you're that kind of a person, with what you save, the Sublime membership just ends up paying for itself. Even regular customers, even if you're not a Qobuz subscriber, anyone can go to Qobuz.com and go to the download store, and you get just superlative prices, I think better than anyone else around, even if you're not a member. So if you're not a member, like for this one that we've got pulled up, Crime of the Century, you would only be paying $20.99 for it for the 24/192 version, as opposed to $30 or $40. But if you're a Sublime member, that's only $10.49. So if you can imagine, pretty easy math here. If you do 2 or 3 downloads, you'll end up pretty much paying for your subscription. The other cool thing that I love to talk about on our site, because we've got so many incredible playlists from our partners, take a look at the playlists that we've got. We support almost everyone in the industry, and we've got tons and tons of incredibly interesting playlists. There was a while in high end that if you were, going to a show or whatnot, you would go into 20 different rooms, and you would probably hear the exact same thing in all 20 of the rooms. It'd be something like, Niles Lofgren, Niles don't, or Keith Don't Go, or Diana Krall, Peel Me a Grape, or something like that. These days you walk into, if once the show's open back up, you'll notice that you're going to walk in and you're going to have an incredibly wide variety of what's being played, because there's just so much more stuff available. Roon just submitted a playlist as well. In fact, Roon has got 3 playlists on Qobuz. And this is really cool to me because I know the guys from Roon really, really well. I've known them for a long time, since the Sulus days. And one of the things I can tell you about that company is they're all music lovers. It's amazing the diverse tastes that these guys have got, and they all kind of hop in and put their choices for whatever music is going to be going on it. So at any rate, at this point, I think I would like to welcome our guest, Enno Vandermeer from Roon. He is the CEO and president of Roon. Enno, how are you doing, buddy?
Very well, sir. How are you?
Missing you, but doing pretty well. How about you?
Good to see you.
Here's
Very excited to be here. Thank you.
Cheers.
Oh yeah, indeed.
Enno and I yesterday we were talking and we were going, well, you know what? We haven't seen each other in so long. Let's just, why don't we just have a drink while we're having this conversation? And I'm going, okay, Enno, you know me, buddy. I'm not a great drinker, but because it's you, I'm going to do it. So hi, everybody. Welcome Enno.
Thank you.
So how's the how have you guys been affected by the pandemic?
It's been, I don't know. I feel extraordinarily fortunate. We, when we started this company for, practical reasons, we had no funding and whatnot. We didn't set up offices. We didn't do any of that stuff. The whole team has been remote since 2015. So in a lot of ways, just in terms of how we conduct our business, it's nothing has changed. Everyone's working as that. We've all worked from home all these years. So we've been very, very lucky. Yeah, I mean, we as a team, we talked about that earlier this year, like how fortunate we are that we're able just to kind of keep rolling. So yeah, it's been, as this year goes, it could have been a lot worse for us. It's been,
yeah, same goes here, but we're both kind of in the same boat in that I'm finding people are listening to music a lot more, and not only just listening to music, but really discovering music and getting into it at a level that a lot of us just simply haven't had time to do because of the hustle and bustle of our lives. So every now and then, something happens that goes, you are going to slow down, and you're going to slow down right now.
We've seen a lot of that. We've seen a lot of people saying that, I've heard about Roon, or I've been meaning to upgrade my hi-fi. I've been meaning to sit down and really get into all this stuff. I mean, speaking for myself, I know I've done the same kind of thing. Those DIY projects that you never got around to. This has definitely been the year to get to them. So, yeah, we've been lucky to get quite a few new users that way. Just people that finally had the time. So yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah, I just now, my daughter is home from university. And of course, she's right outside of my door with her blow dryer. I'm going to close this door real quick. I apologize. So, say something while I'm doing this.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I think David and I were saying that I should probably do the quick version of kind of the history of the Roon team, how we came to be, and I'll do it. I'll be quick because I know a lot of you
guys. That's exactly what I was going to ask you about right now, anyway.
It's a sensible enough place to start. I'll be quick about the history, but I want to emphasize a couple of details that I don't talk about very often because I think they're really relevant today. Back in the sort of mid 90s, I was living in New York City with a bunch of roommates, and they were all in the music industry. So we had, one recording engineer and record producer, someone who worked at a major label, somebody who worked at an indie label. So my whole social life during that time was New York City music scene. And so what we did as roommates was we put our CD collections together, we merged them. And in the living room, we had this epic wall. It was CDs as far as you could see. And that was, our social life centered in that physical space, in that apartment. People would come over, we'd have parties constantly, and listening to music was the center of that whole scene. So towards the late 90s, when that, we all started going our separate ways, it was kind of a heartbreaking moment to break up this massive collection of music. It wasn't some my CDs were my CDs. Those were the most important ones, but I had become so spoiled by having access to all this other stuff that I might not have bought and whatever, but it had been years that I'd had this, and it was really kind of breaking my heart that I was going to lose that. So anyway, around that same time, I met Danny Dulai, who, just socially through friends or whatever. And he had a completely different situation, which was that he'd already amassed a pretty huge collection, but he was trying to solve this problem of he wanted music in every room of his house. That was his thing. He wanted to be able to listen to music in the shower and while he was cooking, and he just wanted, and I had never even thought about that. I had a big stereo in the living room and maybe something little in my bedroom, but he was just hell-bent on having music everywhere. So the two of us got to talking, and he said, well, I've been writing some software that helps me solve this problem. And I said, well, I need some software that helps me solve my problem. I need access to all this, this, whatever it was, 8,000 CDs. So we got together and started working on this first product together that became Sulus. But it was born out of a personal need. There was no great, we didn't have a commercial plan. We didn't, we had no ambitions like that. We wrote it for ourselves. So what it turned into was this music app that could store a ton of music, stream it to all the rooms of your house. And we decided that if you weren't going to have like the CDs with the liner notes in your hand, then the next best thing would be a touchscreen interface, which today is like everyone's got it in their pocket. But in the 90s,
that was
right?
magic.
Like ATM was the closest thing that anyone ever got to a touchscreen, right? So we thought it's got to be that, because you got to be able to touch it, you got to be able to flip through the albums and whatever. So we built this user interface, and we lived with it for a couple of years just as a laugh for ourselves, and we assumed sooner or later somebody's got to bring a product like this to market because it makes so much sense. And that didn't happen. So a couple of years later, it was 2004, I think, we finally started Sulus, and we were so green. We built all this hardware because in those days you didn't have tablets and smartphones and that sort of thing. So the system that we designed was this monstrous, many thousands of dollars to get in the door. And it was not the thing that we envisioned, because it wasn't accessible to anyone. We wanted to make something that our friends could use, and it was definitely not that.
But it was still really cool, Enno, and that it was like a proof of concept, right? I remember the first time I saw that screen and they let me touch it. And when I touched it, this magical stuff happened. And you're right, this was so far beyond and before most anybody got in, or really anybody got into this. So yeah, you guys did a great job with Sulus.
We did something interesting that I've only recently figured out was super weird. Like, it turns out that not everyone reads the liner notes of their CDs, or did at that time. I thought that's what everyone did. I thought you bought a record. I mean, I did it with vinyl. I did it with CDs. Like, you read the, whatever, you get to know the stuff. It turns out that lots and lots of people just don't care, and they're just happy to throw on the radio, and that's that. But to me, the experience of being a music fan involved knowing as much as possible about the music, right? So
me too.
You read the liner notes, you subscribe to magazines, you go to websites, you whatever, you amass all the information you could. So the idea of making a digital player product, it made sense to us that it should have all the metadata in the world in it. That seemed like table stakes. As it turns out, that's not the approach that most people take. They just want, artist, album, track, and I'm done. But yeah, so we've been doing that from the get-go, and that's still sort of the foundation of Roon, that idea of saying, here's the music, here's a whole bunch of information about it that you might not have known, that's going to inform how you explore music from there. It's all about the experience is all about enjoying what you know, what you love, rediscovering the stuff you love, and discovering new music that you might not have found otherwise. We're trying to create the experience of going into a record store as kids and talking to the clerk who knows a lot more about music than you do. That's the idea. Anyway, sorry. So we started Sulus. We made this product. It was kind of critically acclaimed, won a bunch of awards and whatever else, but it was so ridiculously expensive that we couldn't get it distributed very, very widely. And in the end, what we ended up doing was we ended up selling the company to Meridian Audio in the UK, which was a whole other kind of eye-opening, in the sense that obviously they've been established for decades, and so they knew their manufacturing and distribution to a degree that we never ever did. But also they're huge pioneers in digital audio, so
Right.
it was a great learning experience for us, really, and it expanded that product. We ended up through Meridian, did some work for HP, which was interesting in the sense that it taught us how to deploy a software product at massive scale. We wrote an app that was bundled on all the HP notebooks and desktops. It was going out like 20 million people a year. So that was something very different from our experience, of course, as well. And then from there, we spun out of Meridian and started Roon. The idea was that now that people did have smartphones and had access to cheap storage and streaming content and whatever else, that we could make a software product that would give you this experience and aggregate the files that either the CDs you've ripped or the high-res files you've downloaded, integrate all of that with your streaming content, and kind of bridge into the streaming world for really avid collectors and audiophiles. Sorry. Deep breath.
No. That's I really appreciate the background. There's something though that I failed to mention that I want to go ahead and mention, because there's a few people that are commenting on this. Oh, I've got Roon or I've got Qobuz, and I sure would like to have Roon or Qobuz and check it out. We are giving away 6 Roon subscriptions for 6 months, and on top of that, we're going to mate those with 6 months worth of Qobuz. So make sure that you guys comment, ask questions. We're gonna pick the winners from like the coolest comments or the best questions and that kind of thing. So know that we are giving away a few of these, because as Enno and I were talking yesterday, we want people to experience the rabbit holes that we go down, the fun that we have. The biggest thing, and I'm going to get you to do an umbrella, because there's a lot of people that really at this point going, what the heck? What is this? From a personal experience, one of my favorite things to say about Roon, and I've said it a whole bunch of times because it just is true, that if you've got Roon and Qobuz and you can get to bed before 2:30 in the morning, you're doing it wrong. I cannot stop. Once you start in Roon, the music discovery is beyond your wildest expectations, because there's so much of it out there that you just don't know anything about. So kudos to you guys. It's the best user experience that I could imagine, and I never want to be without it. So just great job. Just great job.
It's funny. There's a video that we did years ago, I think back when we were at Meridian. We did kind of a video to explain what Sulus was trying to do. And I was talking to Danny about it. We're trying to remember, like, where did it all start? What was the idea here? And it actually started out of a conversation that we all had one night at my apartment, which was, this has been in sort of late 90s. Well, what happens when people do have access to all the music in the world? Because that was a hugely esoteric concept at that point, right? It's like, I've collected 100 CDs or 500 or 1,000 or 10,000, but the idea of actually being able to get to all the music in the world, well, what would you listen to if you could do that? That was the question that we were kicking around. Like, how would you do that? Where would you start? Because 60 million tracks is very impressive, but it's also very daunting. Like, where do I begin? So that was kind of the genesis of this whole thing. Like, if you were to have access to that, how would you explore it? You're obviously not going to listen to all 60 million tracks. You're not going to listen to a tiny, tiny fraction of them. But how are you going to pick the ones that are really, they're going to be worth your time? So that
it's just to back that up statistically. I read a report. This was a couple years ago, but I'm quite sure it's not much different than was then. Is that people tend to hover around 100 albums? That's it. I mean, literally, that is it. So, being able to have something that will help you expand that 100 albums really is, you got to have something else. I have people, when I recommend Roon, because I recommend it all the time, I frequently get people saying, "Oh, well, I manage my music on iTunes or something like that," and I'm going, yeah, it's still just a place to put stuff, right? It doesn't really help you discover. That's the one thing about Roon that just blows me away. And it happens in so many ways. And I'll tell you, I think I've shared this with you before. It was my first experience with Roon. I'm going, okay, I got music. I got tons of music. Let's see what these guys are all about. And so I was listening to James Brown. I went, oh, well, they've got, who's this saxophone player? It's Macy. I mean, I know who it is. Maceo Parker. Hit Maceo Parker. And then all of Maceo Parker stuff goes down. I'm listening to a bunch of Maceo Parker stuff. I'm going, God, these 3 albums sound amazing. Who is this producer? Oh, Dick Jones. Oh, wow. This is all the stuff that Dick Jones does. Right. I mean, it just continues. You cannot stop the tree if you just cooperate with the thing. It's just so much fun. Nothing else I know can do that, not without a lot of research on your own. And the thing about Roon is it just allows you to continue to listen to music, fortunately or unfortunately for sleep.
I mean, that was definitely one of the guiding principles. I mean, I think there's a whole class of music fan that's accustomed to having, in the past, having their player open, having Wikipedia open in one tab of their browser and maybe allmusic.com in another and whatever, just constantly cross-referencing. And Roon does try to kind of roll that all together, because our idea was that the time that when you're listening to music, that's exactly the moment at which you want to know a little bit more about that artist that you're listening to right now. It's not like I'm listening now and then I'm doing research later. The idea was kind of fold those two experiences together and make them, because we thought they belonged together. Probably just kind of do a quick, kind of illustration of how that works, if that's okay. Maybe.
You want to do a screen share?
Yeah. Why don't I do that? Let me see here. I'm going to start with an album that I'm thinking I'll pick something that everyone knows. Let's see.
So in case you don't know, folks that are watching, this is the Roon interface that Enno is playing with right now.
Let me see here. So let's say I pick Sketches of Spain by Miles Davis. So in this case, this version is actually, this is files on the hard drive of my laptop. But so what you're seeing here is everything you're seeing has been added by Roon, all this information. So you've got the review of the album, which talks about all the people who worked on it. You can see the recording date, the original release date, super kind of granular information about the album. Here on each of the tracks, you'll see performance and composer credits. You've got album level credits as well. So you've got your composer, arranger, but also you've got all the musicians. And in this case, there's quite a lot of those. But here broken down by the instruments that they perform, and everything that you see is a link. So we'll come back to that idea in a second. But here, just starting from this one album, I could say, for example, okay, who is Gil Evans? I have no idea. I can click through to Gil Evans and learn about his career. But actually, before I do that, I'm going to go have a look if you go look at Miles Davis as an artist, now of course none of this information exists in my files for Sketches of Spain, right? This has all been added by Roon. So by adding that album now, we've got a bio for Miles, and we've got, where and when he was born and died, all of his biographical information. And here you can see these are the 5 albums by Miles that I happen to have on this laptop. I promise that's not all it's in my real collection, but whatever, this is my laptop. Singles, EPs. Here are albums on which he appeared by other artists. So that's a good example of something you might not know if you hadn't read all the liner notes to all the albums in your collection. But the really exciting thing is I go from having 5 Miles albums, and that could be 1 album. Down here, I go down and I see what's available on Qobuz, and I can see there's thousands of additional albums available on Qobuz, main albums, singles, and EPs. But here I can also see all the collaborations that he did with other artists. So with Charlie Parker, with Duke Ellington, Sarah Vaughan, with Cannonball Adderley, all this stuff, Roon has kind of pulled all this stuff together, which would be incredibly hard to find unless you went and did all this research manually. So from knowing that I like Sketches of Spain, I heard it somewhere and I added that album to my collection. Suddenly I'm exploring this whole world of jazz from something that I understand. It has a context. We very often talk about Roon providing context. It's probably the most important thing. It's a sensible way to explore. It's not what's trending. It's not the most popular this or that. It's what makes sense from where I am. I've said I like Sketches of Spain, so where can I go from there? And that's what Roon's doing here. So here you can see, of course, Miles is an interesting example because he's collaborated with tons and tons of people, and you'll see all of those here. But then I can also go look at the relationships between Miles and other artists. So I could see that he was, let's say, that this is interesting actually, that he considers himself to have been influenced by James Brown. So now with one click, I'm in a completely kind of different area. Now I'm looking at, soul and funk, and I've gone from Miles to a completely different place. So when we talk about rabbit holes, this is what we're talking about. I pick one track, and a few clicks later, I end up in a completely different genre, in a different decade. This is the sort of exploratory fun, and everything about the user interface of Roon. It's not like a media player. It's not organized as folders or trees or things that you navigate by drilling down and backing out again. It's designed to be this forward-moving kind of experience. Let me see what else I can pick here. Let me see what we get with Hendrix. Yeah, see, on my laptop, I don't have that much stuff. But yeah, so here in Hendrix is a good example. I've got nothing in my collection, but on this laptop. But on Qobuz, there's 329 albums that I could explore. So this is a great example of not having very much local content. I've only got the 80 or 100 CDs that David was talking about, but from there I can really access the millions of tracks of streaming in a way that's accessible. Anyway, we'll come back to this to the screen share a little bit later. I just wanted to point out how you can kind of browse around.
Yeah, that's super fascinating. Another thing that really intrigued me when I first hooked up Roon. Now this has been several years, so but if you're just hooking it up, you'll go through the same thing. I've got probably 8 or 9 terabyte or more hard drives laying around. And, over the years, I've literally, let me just put this here, and you just kind of almost forget about it, right? So the really cool thing that happened to me was and these hard drives are hooked up to different outputs and whatnot, because I've just got a lot of stuff. And what I noticed to begin with is it started before I ever put in, at that point I was with Tidal. And before I ever put in even those subscription, it started going, oh, 200, oh, 400, oh, 1,000, oh, 5,000, oh, 8,000. I mean, I end up with like 8,000 tunes that I've got on a hard drive somewhere, all sort of configured differently. And then all of a sudden it starts throwing in artwork and information. And I'm going, oh my God, this is as someone who, like you, has built many, many hard drives worth of music and had a whole lot of stuff happen to your metadata. Right. I hook this thing up and it starts populating with music that I've got. I'm thinking, oh my God, this is incredible. Now, quite frankly, a lot of that stuff was in 1644, and now I've got it in 24-bit. So with the way that I recommend people what they use their hard drives for these days, or stuff they can't get on a higher resolution in streaming, right? If you've got a good example, Roger Waters amused to death that it's not available anymore. You can't buy it anymore. So if I want that, I've got to have that on my hard drive. You can get the new one, you just can't get the old one. So If I want that, I've got to have it on my hard drive. So I do honestly have a lot of kind of, weird stuff on there, or duplicates, things that don't really matter. But I've got about 1,000 totally eclectic songs that you just can't find anywhere else. And it's so cool that Roon found them, put information on there. If the information wasn't there, like a picture or something, I can add it myself. Right. So, you guys give us the ability to really enhance the music, not only that's coming from the internet, but stuff that you've got that you've got already.
Well, we actually started off thinking maybe we should do something that, some software did back in the day, which was to say, let's give you a bunch of great tools for editing the metadata of your stuff. And then we thought, if we could have anything in the world, it would not be a great editor, because grooming metadata is not, it's not fun. It's time consuming, and it's a arduous task. So we thought, well, look, if Roon could do that stuff for you automatically and get it right, at least most of the time, that would actually be more value than a great set of editing tools. So that's kind of where we focus. But there's another thing to your point about what value a RIP CD collection has. Collecting music is, to me anyway, I think of it as it forms part of your identity. You have it used to be that you have your records on the wall, and someone could walk into your home and form some opinion about who you were based on your record collection, right? So that, to me, that's an important thing. You've collected those CDs over the years, you've ripped them. Now they're at CD quality, but in Roon, you can look at them and you can find versions. You can find the version on Qobuz. If there's a high-res version available, you go to your CD that you love and you'll find that high-res version of it right there. So you don't have to go search for it. So that is another value that it does represent your favorites, right? So if you use that as a jumping off point, now you can find the high-res versions of the stuff you love.
Great point. You guys, let's talk about this, because I'd like to hit this just head on. Because once you use Roon for a while, like if you tried to take Roon from me, you'd be jerking back a nub, because there's no way you're getting it out of my fingers until the lid closes. This isn't the cheapest thing in the world, right? So when people tell me this is expensive, I almost don't know what to say, because it does sound expensive. If you've never used Roon, I mean, what is a lifetime running right now, Enno, and what is monthly?
Lifetime is, I think, $6.99 US, and it's the monthly is $12.99, and the annual is $119. Okay. Now, I should explain this subscription model for a minute, because it's important. It used to be that we think of Roon as being your source component, in the sense that you might have had a CD transport or SACD, whatever you had, right? And that I still have a turntable, for my vinyl, but Roon has become my source component for all my digital audio. And so in that sense, it has real value for me, the fact that it does the multi-room thing. But what we said was, look, there's something very cool about the subscription software model, which is that, and actually I should sort of preface that by saying that there's the precedent that we're up against is that apps have become free. Since the smartphone came along, every game developer and every kind of app developer realized that the way to someone's heart was a free app. And so you see a lot of this kind of this freemium model where people feel like software should be free to some degree. But the truth is, we're a small company. We need to, we need to keep the lights on. And this is the one thing we make. So there has to be some way to commercialize that. We settled on the subscription model because I love the idea that we have to earn that annual subscription every year with new features, with new updates, with new, the product has to be improving continuously for us to keep customers. Otherwise, people are going to say, get lost. It's not worth it. And I think that's a very healthy relationship for us to have as a software developer with our customers. We're constantly motivated to improve the product, which is something that, used to be you'd buy Photoshop for $1,500 or whatever, and then you'd be waiting for however many years until Adobe decided to release a new version of it, right? And we thought, that's not a good way to get started. So let's go with the subscription thing. So that's the idea of it.
Okay, well, listen, here, the reason that I think this is not an expensive thing, and you're absolutely right. That's what I tell people too. Just think of it as a component. Rip the Band-Aid off, buy yourself this component because it's going to make your experience over the top as opposed to just mediocre. So really it's, to me, that's the end result. And if you're a Roon user, you know that it's kind of almost hard to turn your program on week after week without it go, oh, well, there's an update, hit here. Okay, cool. It'll restart itself. It never takes long, but it happens all the time. Which really kind of brings us to the people that you do have. One of the things that I have been, sorry, there's a bit of an echo here. Let me turn this down a little bit. One of the things that I've been enamored with is your team members. Everybody on the team seems to be completely and utterly brilliant. Danny, I sit at Danny's feet for every time I go to New York, we always get together, Danny, Mike, and myself. And between those two guys, I am sitting there with my jaw dropped open most of the time. It's like, are you kidding me? I want to have conversations with these guys just so I can be smarter. I mean, it's that kind of a team. I've never met anybody that's smart. And yet that might, that's a nice compliment, Dave, or that may be a nice surface compliment, but it's not a surface compliment. Starting from the head, from you on down, everyone seems to be just quite brilliant. Tell me just about a couple of your members. Can you tell me a little bit about Danny and his history? Just so these folks can get an idea of the kind of people that are working on this every single day.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're right that I think without exception, everyone at the company is a rabid music fan. A lot of us are musicians ourselves or have some background in the industry, but at a minimum, we're all rabid fans and collectors and listeners. So, Danny's background, actually, when I met Danny, he was working at Bloomberg in New York. So he was working in the financial sector, running a team of a really crazy software development team within Bloomberg. And, as I mentioned, we ran Sulus as a hobby for a few years. And I finally sort of compelled him to come join full time. And software development in the financial sector it's a lucrative and happy place for a lot of people. So it was a big deal to bring him across. But he ended up bringing Brian, who's now our CTO, also from Bloomberg, who he had recruited out of Carnegie Mellon, where I think he was a double major in computer science and jazz performance. So it was a very eclectic bunch of just super skilled people who all love music. And so yeah, that is definitely. That's very cool. It enables us to do what we do. But there's another thing, which is that the people who use Roon are also a super specialized set. I mean, we have audiophiles and very, very serious music collectors, music aficionados. And that actually has, in recent years, there's been a shift that has allowed that to improve the product as well, because there's been a lot of, a lot in the news over the last few years about machine learning and about, the kinds of, media recommendations that you can make using machine learning. And that is true. But what we discovered as we started implementing some of those kinds of algorithms ourselves was that because our users are such, there's such rabid collectors and they're such specialists in their little subgenres that they know better than anyone, the listening data that we get, the training data is what you call it in machine learning, from our own users is, you wouldn't find a user like that on Spotify. Our users plumb the depths of their specialized areas. So when Roon makes recommendations, it's based on those people, the experience of those people and their knowledge. So the fact that we've been able to attract this sort of hyper engaged, music audience has allowed the product to become even better than it could have been, which is pretty exciting as well.
I've got a really good friend, Neil Small, and he runs one of the Roon user groups, and I really look at that as a sister site to Streaming Music Matters, because we're always, there's a Roon question, just go over there and ask those guys. They're super brilliant in which they are. You would not believe the number of people they help, and on some level, you guys do have almost a non-costed customer service group out there of hundreds and hundreds of people. And a lot of these people are like Neil, like he's like a computer scientist or something. I'm talking to Neil about 2 months ago and I'm going, Neil, I kind of want to get into this whole Roon endpoint thing, because I just want to know what it's about. I've got just servers and stuff like that. Like 3 days later, Neil has built me and sent me a Pi so that I could play with. And he's going, man, if you ever have any questions about Roon, just give me a shout. I cannot tell you how many people that I just don't even tell people to go to Roon anymore. I just go ask Neil at his group. They'll tell you, and Neil, somebody will ask a question there, and oh my gosh, these guys, 15 of them will answer from the Roon forums or from their own experience or whatnot. So just setting up a system like that blows me away. I've been in this industry for my whole life. I've never seen anything even close to that. So kudos to you guys.
I think it's sort of a new phenomenon, this idea that you have, a product or service that's so focused on the needs of a niche audience that it forms a community around it. You see it in cycling, you see it in sailing. There are a few of these areas where people get so passionate. And if there's something, obviously we didn't, Roon was not built on a business plan to go public and make $1 squillion. That was not we all do this because we love it. And we attract people, I think, who feel the same way. So yeah, that has been, you're right. The audience, the kind of community that's grown up around Roon is astounding. In many cases, they're more knowledgeable about aspects of the product than I am. It's amazing to see.
Oh yeah. A lot of these guys, they have, they live and breathe computer science and routes and IM and just all of the things that really help us out. I haven't discussed this with Neil, but I'm guessing that he basically has just been in computer science his whole life. And also IT, right? Because that's a whole nother specialty. But yeah, you guys have got a wonderful community supporting a wonderful product, and that it's like you said, nobody's paying them to do this. They're doing this out of the love of the product, the love of music, and helping people be able to discover all of the cool things about Roon. So, yeah, like I say, great job. And thanks for telling us a little bit about your team. One of the people that I wanted to talk to was a person that everyone at Roon told me about, this mystery guy. I'd known you guys for years, and we always got along great. We'd go out to dinners, we'd have drinks, we just always have a great time together. But there's this one guy that you always kept like in the basement and going, no, you don't want to talk to this guy. And I ask a few times, I'm going, well, why not? He goes, he's too smart. He would get bored with you in 30 seconds and then the conversation would be over. And that was a gentleman named Brian. I finally ended up getting to meet Brian. And our whole meeting was around when Qobuz launched. He happened to be at the session that we had, the big party that we had at downtown in New York, and I'm going, man, you got to tell me about this radio thing, because the radio thing was just kind of, I'm not even sure if it was a launch or it was just about to be launched or just launched, but I knew that it was like different than everyone else's radio function. And Brian set me down for 2 hours. I didn't say a word unless I just had a question for him to qualify or to expound upon. But most of the time, I'm just sitting there going, in my mind, I'm going, you are kidding me. You are kidding me. You guys were able to do that. And everybody talks about how cool the Roon radio is. And I've had a few members that's, when someone pops up and go, well, why should I get Roon? Why should I pay this much money for it? There's always somebody there that goes, if you use the radio alone, it's worth the money, and just pretend like it's a tuner. If that's all you ever use it for, it's worth the money. Can you tell us a little bit about the radio on here?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it comes out of the machine learning stuff that I was talking about earlier. And I will be the first to admit that I understand single digit percent of how this system works. But it's astounding because Brian showed it to me. We were talking about it, and what we were talking about was that the frustration in recommendation services that, I play a pop song because I'm guilty of doing that from time to time. And then the next thing I get is the most popular pop song right now. And that's not really what I'm a sensitive music listener. That's not the right thing. So how do you get the right thing? And so, Brian explained to me the first thing that we do is we have to model your taste. I was like, so what does that look like? He's like, well, it exists in multidimensional vector space. It's hard to describe, but whatever. But here's a two-dimensional projection of your taste. And he showed me a screenshot of it. And it was like these groupings of, you'd have rock stuff, and you'd have electronic stuff, and you'd have classical over here and jazz, and you'd have artists that bridge these various groupings. And I looked at it, and I was like, man, if I spent like a month and wrote down every artist that I liked and try to do, position them sensibly in a way that they were all connected, I might come up with something half as good as this. And that was just generated by the system that he built. So that's one aspect of it is understanding your taste, really, really understanding it based on the stuff you have in your library, what you actually listen to, all that kind of stuff. But then kind of correlating that with everyone else's maps to figure out, well, David likes these three things, but he's never ever listened to those other things that could be clustered in this vector space nearby. Let's take a gamble and see if he likes it. That's what Roon Radio does constantly. It's always kind of straddling the line between what's a safe recommendation, a sure thing that we know he's going to like next, and something that's maybe on the boundary, but will expose him to something new. That was the product design goal. That's me talking about it in lay terms. It's much more complicated than that, of course, but that was the goal. And so when people say they like it, that's what they're experiencing. Is they're getting something that's really satisfying a lot of the time, and they're also getting some little challenges, which as music lovers we enjoy. We like, part of the excitement of finding something new is that it's a little bit outside your comfort zone.
That's one of the challenges we have at Qobuz. People ask us all the time, why don't you have a radio? We want a radio, and we don't want to just do a radio because we can add that button, but it would be kind of like everybody else's button that I don't like, or that I feel like could be greatly improved on what, to your point, what I like. And the Roon radio really, really helps me not only kind of stick to what I was sort of listening to before, but it takes me almost to the outer limit of what I was listening to or what I'm thinking in my head. Because, like I say, folks out there, if you're a music lover, you know, you more than likely have got 100 albums that your collection revolves around, or your thought patterns revolve around. The really cool thing about the Roon radio function is it doesn't stick with those things that only you know. It sticks with the things it knows, which takes your couple of hundred possible choices up to thousands and thousands of choices. So you just end up, either one of two things happens to me with Roon Radio. I either remember something that I really, really dug in the past, or I find something that I didn't even know existed, and I become a big fan. So if you've been listening for a while, and you can start to understand why we're saying, if you can go to bed before 2:30 in the morning when you've got Roon and Qobuz, you're doing something different than I'm doing. It's like, when I know that I got to get rest that night, I just don't turn on I just don't turn on Roon, because if I do, I know it's not just it's not just something I'm going to do. It's a commitment, right? And so, to your point, I'm like, I love reading liner notes, but let me tell you what I hated reading liner notes is when they were in a CD format, because even when I was really young, I would look at that and go, seriously, I'm going to read Lamb Lies Down on Broadway on this? I don't think so. I just won't do it. So really what we've done is we've lost a whole generation of people to MP3 that don't know what full resolution sounds like. And we've lost at least a generation, if not a generation and a half, for reading liner notes. People don't know as much about music as they did when we used to, get back. We would open up our albums while they were playing, and we're reading like properly fonted or pointed size that we could actually relate with, as opposed to getting out the magnifying glass. I'm going, you know what? Sorry. It's just not worth it. If it was really big, I would go on the internet and search it out. But most of the time, frankly, I would just play it. We've really lost a generation to lower quality and to the knowledge of music, or deep knowledge of music. I think both of our companies are trying to not necessarily put an end to it, but certainly give an alternative, a better alternative than that's been there. And I'm seeing more and more and more people come into our way of thinking. Some of it's based on what you and I have been doing, and some of it's just based on the pendulum kind of coming back around. Thank God it's coming back around to music discovery and to a higher resolution than, say, MP3. So I'm really super not only thankful for that, but I'm very optimistic in where that's going to end up taking our industry.
I think that kind of that sort of split among users has always existed. I mean, even when we were kids in ancient times, you had people who were content to listen to FM radio, and then you had others who collected albums and made mixtapes and got super, super engaged. They're just two different types of users, and I think we're both focused on that enthusiast, that very engaged user who wants more from the experience. Both in terms of sound quality and in terms of all these sort of ancillary metadata. It's not everyone in the world. I think I don't think it's actually too cynical to say that the mass market streaming services are sort of like FM radio replacement.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of thrown on, it's fine, it's good enough. And for someone who only wants that, it is fine. But it's nice to be able to offer some alternatives to people who want more, who are looking for more.
Yeah, look, it's not just fine. I mean, really, when you break it down to its bottom level, like a 320 MP3, like a Spotify, it's better than any FM that you and I ever had.
Sure.
We never have to listen to a DJ talk over our favorite song. We can pull up any kind of playlist that we want. and just throw on the radio. I mean, it's a lot easier to deal with. But in one way, like passive music, to me, the quality has gone way up because you've gone from, say, FM to like a 320. To me, 320 beats FM all day long. So I don't really have a problem with it. And I know that there are plenty of people that are going, that's good enough. One of my main points are more people are being exposed to high res and information about music today than they ever have been before. So, like I said, that pendulum, I think, is swinging. On a personal note, I don't think I've told you this, but when I first started with Qobuz, my son Noah, he was, I think, 15 at the time, and an avid Spotify guy. And I'm going, Noah, what do you think about this? He goes, Dad, I can't tell the difference, because I brought him up here with the big Martin Logan system, and I'm playing the song that he was playing, and then I switched because I'm so proud of Qobuz, right? I switched to like a 2496 version of what he's playing, and I'm going, because I could hear it right away, and I'm going, so what do you think, son? And he says, yeah, it's good, Dad, but yeah, it's Spotify. It's just fine with me. Okay, I got it. So about a month later, I cut his Spotify account off, and I'm going, here's Qobuz. You can use this, or you can pay for your own Spotify. Okay, of course he bitched at me for a while about it, and then I just didn't hear much else. Then I call him into my office about 6 months later, and I said, no, I want you to sit down and listen to something. So I said, this is the same song that you were just playing downstairs on Spotify. And he goes, yeah, that sounds fine, Dad. And I'm going, here it is on Qobuz. And he goes, oh, that sounds different. I go, okay, well, here it is on Spotify again. And he's going, oh, no, Dad, bring back the Qobuz thing, right? It's like this. That's the people that I'm the most interested in, or our younger people that are now finally starting to at least have high resolution accessible. Because like 2 years ago, if you had a high resolution file, you were a nerd. You were like an audio nerd. I'm right there. I had tons of, because I bought them, right? All the other real people, the civilians, they're listening to MP3 going, that's just fine. But you let someone listen to full or high resolution for 6 months and then try to take it away from them, that's when they're going to start noticing it. And that's the trend that I'm starting to see. The other trend that I'm starting to see, which I think is going to really help you guys as well, is that since we went down to the $15 price point when we matched Amazon, which we were really just doing, based on survival, some really beautiful things started happening. We started seeing people that had come from Spotify or Apple because they were within range at that point. And so now you've got this whole, sorry about that. I don't know what's going on with the service, but my point was, now you've got this whole generation now coming up that has got high resolution and full resolution available to them at a fingertip. And I think what's going to end up happening is that pendulum is going to end up swinging the other way. And if you're not listening to full or high resolution music, you're not at the cool kids table anymore.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So that was my thing. So let's see. We've talked about your team. We've talked about music management. One of the things that I'd like you to talk about is managing thousands of songs as opposed to millions of songs, because it does become a good bit different choice. I mean, we've really been kind of talking about that the whole time anyway, with you going through the chains and whatnot. But that is one thing that I really dig about Roon with Qobuz, is it really does help you manage those millions of songs as opposed to the hundreds or thousands of songs that we were able to do before. So I guess the next thing that I'd really like to talk about is the difference of the musical experience with a regular GUI a regular graphic user interface as opposed to a Roon user interface. And I'm going to say this because you're too nice to say it. I've got a lot of servers here. I mean, they're from so many companies, and they all do an adequate job. If I want to pull up the Beatles White Album, I can do it. I can do that on anything that I've got. It's these extra things that Enno has been talking about that I can't do that really enhances my experience. And you guys, there is nobody that touches that experience. The difference of when I look at, say, I'm not even going to say a name, but any graphic user interface that I've got, as opposed to switching over to the Roon graphic user interface, my user experience is different. It's better. It's more enhanced. I have a better time doing it.
Well, thank you. That's definitely something that we've set out to do from the beginning. I think certainly in the products that are targeted the sort of high end, the audiophile market, if you look at UPnP servers, for example, and UPnP clients, typically they're trying to solve a plumbing problem. How do I get this file to play on that device? And it's almost as if the user experience, sometimes we talk in our marketing materials about user experience. It sounds very soft and esoteric. It's actually not. To your point, if I know I want to listen to the Beatles White Album, it's not controversial how the product should work. I should be able to search for it and get to it and play it. But so much of listening and so much of how we interact with music that we love and want to collect and want to explore is not just search and play. There's a lot more to it. There's a lot more serendipity. I go to one thing that I know I like, and then I stumble on something that I didn't know I was looking for. That's the magic, I mean, that's why the newspaper is still relevant, because you go to page 3 to read the end of an article, and then you stumble on something else that you weren't looking for, and that ends up being your favorite read of the day. Serendipity has value. So those kinds of soft things are kind of the foundation of what Roon's user experience is. And we've tried to be sensitive to, we try not to insult the intelligence of the music fan. It's not a folder tree. There's more subtlety to it than that. I wonder if maybe I should quickly show how we approach classical music, because I think it's probably a good example of this. Can we go back to the
talk about? But before, actually, yeah, go ahead and talk about this, and we can come back in just a second. But this is exciting because you guys have actually got some enhanced features that are going to be coming out soon with classical search, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay,
everybody's going to hear about this.
I'm sure everyone's had the experience. I mean, if you've used a UPnP server or any kind of service, you'll encounter things like where for example, Beethoven, who hasn't been with us for several centuries now, is described as an artist, and obviously that doesn't make any sense. He was an artist in his day, but he's not an artist anymore. We have no recordings of his performances. So the data model that governs things like pop and rock and country and jazz and whatever doesn't really work very well for classical, because you don't have artist album track. You've got composer work or composition, performance, and the performance could have a conductor, and it could have a soloist or more soloists. It could have an ensemble. Who knows? The whole data model for classical music is just different. So Roon is built on this idea for, I'm doing a cheat here. We're looking at the composer browser, and I've filtered it down to just my favorites and just classical. I could look at every songwriter across every genre, but it gets very busy. So I'm just looking at classical composers here. If I go to Beethoven, I see a view of Beethoven that's very similar to the way we look at an artist in Roon. So I get a biography the same way, where when he was born, died, the periods during which he composed. But down here, I'm not looking at albums or tracks because he's a composer. I'm looking at his works. Now, we're on my laptop, which only has a very, very small collection on it. So I only have these 5 compositions by Beethoven on my laptop. But you can see, so I've got these 5, which a couple of the piano sonatas, but on Qobuz, there are, 1,100 more. So if I want to get to the Ninth Symphony, and these are again ranked with the machine learning algorithms that we have by popularity and whatnot. So Ninth Symphony shows up first. I can go there, and what I'm going to see now is I'm going to get a view of a Beethoven work that I don't even own. It's not in my collection. It's the most popular Beethoven work ever, but this could very well be my first contact with it. And so what you'll see here is we're looking at a little over 2,200 performances of Beethoven's Ninth, all of which are available on Qobuz, none of which are in my library, with very, very deep metadata, where they were performed, by which orchestras, which conductors, the dates they were recorded, all very deep data. And again, these are sorted by the popularity among our kind of expert listeners. So this isn't just the latest recording that came out, which could very well be something quite terrible. This happens to be the most popular one. The Von Karajan is the most popular recording among Roon users. So back to this idea of context, this gives me a very cool way to experience the Ninth Symphony for the first time. That's something you wouldn't be able to do if you were browsing by artist, for example. It's not something that would be available to you. That's probably enough for the screen share for now. There we go.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's the thing I can tell you. From my side, from our classical music lovers, and we've got one of my favorite people on, Jennifer Martin's on. She's actually a conductor, and she's made a couple of comments. But that has got to be the number one thing, because when you're looking for a specific recording in classical, it could be super, super hard to do. And in speaking with your team over the last little while, I understand that that's something that you guys are even going to go another step on.
We're definitely working on enhancing this feature set even further, because it comes with this unique set of technical challenges. But I think,
like metadata being in different places with every recording label that's out there. I mean, for the folks that are thinking, why don't you just do this? Folks, it's not just a click of a button. Way, way, way before digital happened, these information sheets existed, but they existed in different labels with different parameters and different places in different ways. So when you start dealing with literally hundreds of thousands of different recordings of the same thing, basically, there is a lot of information that would lead you down to just like Enno said, he's got, this one piece. Oh, well, there's 2,200 of this one piece. Really? Well, how are you ever going to get to the one that you are really looking for? I'm super excited that Roon is going to help us all, especially the classical lovers, or really even maybe deep jazz lovers, find what they're looking for much easier, which it's already easier. That's a huge plus.
It's actually, I'm just looking up an example. I mean, one of the challenges in classical is if you look in pop music or in jazz, for example, if I want to find every version, every cover of "Come Together" by the Beatles, that's something that Roon can do very easily, and it's actually a cool example because all kinds of crazy people have covered that
right
song. But that's a fairly one-dimensional problem. In classical, you might have, people wonder, why can't you just connect all the dots and make all this stuff fit together? I mean, you might have an aria from an opera that's recorded that's distributed out of context on some compilation where you don't have the benefit of the whole work around it to understand where it fits in. And so the metadata is absent or incomplete or sometimes inaccurate or whatever. And what Roon's trying to do in the background is trying to connect all these dots and make all this stuff make sense so you can find every single performance. It's an ongoing labor, I'll be honest. It's the data that exists out in the world is far from perfect, but it's getting better all the time. And I think the way we handle it is getting better all the time.
Yeah, the way you guys handle it right now is better than any other way to search for classical. In fact, if you are a classical listener, you almost need you. It's one of those things. If you've got Qobuz or Tidal or Qobuz and Tidal, and you're a classical fan, um, gosh, if I were given a class, this would be one of the required tools that you would have to take my class. I mean, it is just that important. So if you are a big classical fan, you almost have to have it. It's almost like required software for your hardware. You don't have to have it, but you know what, folks, it'll make your experience a whole lot better. And I don't want this to sound like um, a sales, an infomercial, but this is something that a lot of you out there that are listening know me and know that I am a huge music fan of. In my genres, they're almost totally wide open. It's just something that I have found that once I have it, it's just something that if you twisted my arm and like made all kinds of demands, I might be able to live without it, but I would never want to live without it. So you guys have done just a great job. But I really kind of we probably should have done this really more toward the beginning, but just to like go through a bit of um a best practices with Roon, because I did it a whole bunch of ways to begin with, and I did it sort of the wrong way to begin with. I'd loaded up Roon, and I took I was all proud of myself, took my laptop down to my system, hook it all up, and now I'm playing around with Roon. But then I'm going, then I find people like Neil Small out there, or people like him that are going, David, don't do it that way. Just, get a Nucleus and be done with it, because you really need to run Roon if you're really, really going to do it right. Because look, this is not a sort of overlay app. This is a very, very powerful program that actually requires a bit of computing speed and you got to have kind of a good core to really run this. So the way that Roon recommends that you do this, and I can tell you from my side, after doing it every other way that you could do it, this is absolutely the best way to do it. Roon has something called the Nucleus that really runs the whole Roon core, and then that really goes out and talks to all of the endpoints. This is a really cool little piece of gear that you guys have got here that's really meant for music management and only music management. So tell us a little bit about the Nucleus, Enno.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, when you say you did it the wrong way, there's not actually a wrong way. The way you did it is actually what we see most people doing, and it makes perfect sense. You run Roon the first time on your laptop. You download it, it scans your music, you added your Qobuz account, and you're off to the races. It works just great. But what you find over time is that earlier on, I was talking about when Danny and I met, we had these different set of needs. I wanted lossless CD quality audio, and I wanted all this metadata. He wanted to do the multi-room thing. So the other side of what Roon does is that Roon works with pretty much any audio playback device out there at this point. And that was very much the goal, was that we knew that it's not just about how you browse music and choose what to listen to, it's also how you listen. And there are, even for the most diehard audiophiles, there are different use cases for how you listen. In fact, there was a time once when we were at Meridian, I met a Meridian customer who had two of Meridian's flagship systems in his home. And these don't come cheap. And in the other rooms of his house, he had a Sonos system. And I remember thinking to myself, like, the injustice, like, this is so terrible for this guy. He has to have two copies of his music collection because the Meridian stuff doesn't talk to the Sonos stuff and vice versa. And so he's forced to IT manage this colossal kind of system at great expense to get music in every room. So when we started Roon, a big part of it was we have to be sure that Roon will play through whatever devices you've got, the devices you have today, and certainly newer streaming devices going forward. So architecturally, Roon will stream from whatever device, even if you're just running it on your laptop. You can, I can right now, I can make music play down in the kitchen from my laptop here. But that becomes limiting over time, because the minute I take my laptop down to the coffee shop to go, answer some emails, no one else in the house can listen to music anymore. So that's where running it all in one on your PC isn't really ideal. So we developed Nucleus for this reason. We thought, actually, what Roon does, it wants to be an appliance. It wants to be something that's sitting on a shelf or in a cabinet or in your server closet or whatever. It's just on all the time so that everyone can access it. And so we came up with this idea of putting the Roon core on Nucleus. You can anyone in the house can pick up a phone or a tablet or a PC or what have you and control it and tell it where to play music. So Roon has become, Nucleus is very much an infrastructure kind of thing, like your router or your Wi-Fi access point or whatever it is. It's something that's always on. So we designed Nucleus to do something kind of specific. We said, we worked with Intel on it, so it's running kind of state-of-the-art Intel hardware. And we said, let's not run any old operating system on it. Let's create our own Linux operating system that's tuned completely to the task of playing back audio. So it's just focused on file I/O, network I/O, the database processing that the Roon core does. And that's kind of all it does. So, you could be running Roon on your iMac, but that machine's also being used to check your email and stream some Netflix and do this and that and whatever else. The idea of Nucleus is that it's completely dedicated to Roon. So
yeah, my experience has been much better. My experience has been much better. I mean, honestly, I had this server set up so that my family could access the server. And they were using these servers. So I really didn't have that problem as much as maybe some would have. But I got to tell you, I really like it because I was using this on my work computer, and I just bought another computer and did it with. I'm going to end up getting a Nucleus, but for right now, I'm just using a little Mac Mini for my core, which is working just fine. But something that really cool about what you guys have started offering on the Nucleus is a full year subscription for Roon once you get one, right?
Yeah,
which is
absolutely.
really, really cool. I mean, I think that's a really good way to get people really hooked on Roon. And, it's sort of I'm from the outside looking in, I'm going, what a bunch of menches that we've got at Roon. What a bunch of really wonderful people. And they just wanted to throw this in for you. So just know that when you get one of these things, you're getting a really, really nice program for a full year when you're using it. It's a really, really nice product, and so many people have got it. We had a question from Alan Schiff. I can see how Roon pulls directly from Qobuz, but it's to have the ability to search through my library on my hard drive on the same Wi-Fi network. We actually did talk about that a little bit, but could you just?
But this is actually, there's a subtle point here that I'd like to answer. Actually, so wherever you're running what we call the Roon core, sort of the center of the system, that could be on a computer, it could be on a Nucleus, whatever. It will obviously pull streaming content from Qobuz. It will look at any hard drives that are directly connected, but it will also scan any network shares that you make available. So, for example, if you got a huge music library that you keep on a NAS, Roon can actually go over the network and scan that. So it could scan a hard drive attached to another PC. It could scan a NAS. It could scan a local hard drive. It can scan pretty much anything. And in fact, one of the guys on the team has the craziest setup. He's got a few PCs around his house that are dedicated to various purposes. This is Rob. And each PC has its own little local music library on it. And the Roon core in his house scans everyone. So his daughter's music library and his wife's music library and his son's music library and his
Same
music,
here.
they're all scanned and they're all available from within Roon, which is actually pretty
Same
cool.
here.
Cool. Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's like everybody's. That was one of the points I was trying to make everybody. in my family, except my wife has got hard drive. It's got music on a hard drive, and it finds them all, and they're accessible to me. And I'm getting turned on to stuff from my kids that, frankly, most of the stuff I really don't care for. But every now and then, wow, I get something. And I'm going, are you kidding me? Last year, we were listening. I was listening to some music in my studio up here, and my daughter comes in and she said, "Why do you always play such crappy music?" And I'm going, "What are you talking about? Crappy music? I'm playing, whatever it was I was playing. I'm playing the Moody Blues or something. I'm playing Pink Floyd." What do you mean? They told me that Van Morrison sounded like a whiny old man, and I'm going, all I could do not to get thrown in jail from slapping him. Like, are you kidding me? But instead of getting defensive, I'm going, well, baby, what do you listen to? She goes, oh, well, I've got this really cool thing that I just started listening to. Check this out. And bam, she throws on this, and it's not even that new, but it's something that she had never heard me play before, right? She threw on a Shaggy tune with Shaka Khan, and I'd never heard the tune before, but I recognized Shaka's voice, and I'm going, you have got to be kidding me. I love my daughter. She is awesome. She just doesn't know she's awesome, but I was trying to play it cool, right? And I'm going, baby, that is awesome. So she sat down with me. She put her little head on my shoulder, and we finished listening to the same tune. So I'm going, this has become part of my spiel at the audio shows. I'm going, folks, get your kids in the same room. Don't pick out anything. Just give them the tablet. Let them pick it out. And just, if you love it, great. If you hate it, bear with it, right? Just get this thing going on with your kids so that they get into music, right? So my daughter is playing this thing, and she looks at me halfway through the thing. She goes, what do you think about this? And I'm going, baby, this is unbelievable. Do you know about the lady singing? She goes, no. And I go, well, baby, that's Shaka Khan. And she goes, Shaka Khan, who is that? I'm going, well, at this point, she's 71 years old, and that's the way she's singing with Shaggy. It's like she's going, really? Can you show me some of that stuff? So I throw back to some old school Shaka Khan, and she's going, oh, Dad, this is awesome. It's like she's never had that conversation with you, right? Involve your kids in music, people. Involve your kids in what you love, and listen to what they love. I cannot tell you how much you've got in common, or how much you should have in common that you may not right now. But people are looking for things to talk to their kids about because we're in different generations. Folks, music is that language that absolutely transcends generations if you just pay a little bit of attention to it. How old are your kids now, Enno?
Oh man, they're 17, 14, and 11. So it's a handful. It's but there's a lot of this music discussion going on, which is
well,
really,
I was going to ask you if do you guys share music together?
Absolutely. And and it's, each of them has such different tastes, but luckily I know a little something that they each find cool. So I'm still doing okay on the cool scale.
That's the only thing that keeps me cool. Let me tell you, when they say something about one of their artists, I try to go read about it, and it's really easy on Roon to do that. We've also got a lot of metadata on Qobuz as well that I believe you guys pull from as well. So when we show metadata, you show the same metadata, right? Sure. So it's such a great team. These are two products that, you got to have a DAC. You got to have speakers. You got to have the stuff that, makes this work. But if you want the very best musical listening experience that you could get, and I'm saying this not as anyone involved with either of these companies, but more of a music lover. As a music lover, as someone that devours information about the artists that are playing, and from a musical experience, I've never found anything like this. can recommend this wholeheartedly to anyone that's listening. If you're a music lover, you're right, it's not for everyone. I got to tell you, my wife could care less. She puts on background music and she's vacuuming and she's doing things. And I go, well, doesn't it sound better, baby? And she goes, well, yeah, it sounds a lot better. I'm going, well, so what do you think? She goes, well, I don't care. And she walks away and she starts vacuuming again, right? So it's not for everybody. But if you're brinking on a music lover, sort of an intermediate music lover, or you're maxed out like me, this is I can't recommend I can't recommend Roon highly enough. I'm really proud of what you guys have done. And
cool, thank you. I just remembered there's something else I should talk about quickly, just in case in case anybody isn't aware of this. When I was talking about the idea of being able to play music through any device, I should be a little bit more specific about that because it's actually really, really interesting. We came up with this program probably a year after we started that's called Roon Ready. And so what we do is we work with audio hardware manufacturers, and we actually take a bit of code and they embed it in their devices, their network streamers, their powered speakers, things like that. And it's a pretty unique program because what we get to do is we actually certify all those devices. So they all come into our lab, they get certified by our QA team, and we make sure that a couple of things are true. We're able to stream high resolution to those devices to the highest capacity that or capability that they can handle. We have two-way communication between the devices. So, for example, it could be something as simple as volume control from within Roon actually controls the volume on that far end device. So the idea is that a Roon ready device feels like it was made to work with Roon. That's kind of what we're going for. So like in my living room, I've got an integrated amp that I can turn on and off from my desk here in my office, and I can control everything about it from right here. So Roon ready devices let you do that. At this point, there are 300 or 400 Roon ready devices from a couple hundred different brands. From about 100 different brands. And that's growing constantly. But beyond the Roon ready devices, Roon works with all kinds of other devices. So USB DACs, USB speakers, things that work over HDMI, AirPlay devices, Google Cast devices. Roon will stream to any of those. So I can play to my kitchen counter, I've got one of those little, I can never remember the name of it. I'm going to get it wrong. It's the Google Nest Home Hub Max something, whatever. It's one of these things with a screen, smart speaker. I can stream to that from Roon. So the idea is that Roon really does work with pretty much everything at this point. And that's really important because people do have Sonos in their home. Even if it's not what's in the listening room, it may be what's elsewhere in the house. And Roon works with all that different stuff.
Yeah, it works for that stuff. There's a lot that we really didn't get to, and I told you I knew that there was no way where we're going to get through this thing in an hour. I wasn't expecting to. I wanted to give a real overview, but heck, while we're at it, I want to do a quick screen share if that's okay with you. You're still in Cambridge, right?
I am.
So what time is it? Like midnight for you?
It's 11:30. It's not too bad.
10:30. Okay, cool. Then I'm gonna keep you a little bit longer because I wanted to show this. This is an area that, as a sound engineer, when you guys put this here, it to me like, oh my God, thank you. You put this in there just for me because all of my systems, I've got some really, really great systems around the house that I really don't have to do much to at all. But there are other systems in my house that are lacking a little bottom end or lacking a little mid-range. And I'm not the kind of guy that likes a bass and treble volume control. Basically, I like to put the bass and treble where they need to be. And I like to put the bass and treble at the degree that they need to be put in. So Roon has got this thing. They've got a DSP set up in this program that oh, sorry, I got Qobuz there. That's the wrong, there we go. Do you guys see Roon here?
No, we're still seeing Qobuz.
Let me take that off. Let's see. I'm going to share. Boom. You see that, right?
Yep.
Okay, great. This is the parametric equalizer that Roon has. You can either enable it or disable it. It comes disabled, but you can go to their DSP settings under your volume. You'll see the DSP right there. And if you go to DSP, it'll give you this section that gives you a parametric equalizer. I've put in a little curve here that I call the 1979 to 1995 rock curve in here, because what you see on almost all of those recordings, is you'll see a big peak somewhere around the 3 to 4K that really makes things harsh. I like to use a little bit wider of EQ, bring that down here. You'll also see a lot of times what's going to happen is the bass will like almost be missing in a certain area. So like if it's a Led Zeppelin album, I'll take the bottom end sometimes and move it up in any way that I want to move it up. So I can use a real narrow Q, or I could use a really fat Q if I wanted to and expand out where I'm taking up the bass. But the bottom line is you can, I'm going to take my screen share off. You can really manipulate the signal to either create a better sound for your speaker. If you need room correction, it also does that, and it does it automatically. Or you can take it for particular tracks and just say, like me, when it's 80s rock, I know it's going to be deficient in the bottom end, and I know it's going to drive me crazy around the 1 to 3K region. And you can manipulate those recordings and kind of smooth them out, if you will, or add a little bit more bottom end where they don't have that bottom end. But I would encourage you, Roon users, which I'm guessing that probably most Roon users have never been on that page, but if you use a parametric equalizer, it's so much fun just to play with and find out what you can get. Even if you don't exactly know what you're doing, go to the page, play around with it. It's a lot of fun, and you can correct a lot of bad recordings with that thing.
A couple of things to point out about that. We find that people are they tend to be on one side of the fence or the other on this. And so any of those DSP features can always be completely disabled and removed from the signal path. So the idea is, if you want to use it, knock yourself out. We make the tools as powerful as we can. If you don't, they don't even exist. And you can also do them on a device by device basis. So you could say, look, I know that my in-ceiling speakers in my hallway are just terrible, and I just always want to put this EQ curve on them, but I don't ever want to touch the audio that's going to my main listening system.
So this is what Enno's talking about. Any one of these systems I have here, and actually I don't have about 4 of them even enabled, but any one of these systems, you can go to any one and set the system up the way you want to. So it really does. Yeah, if you were making those changes on every system you had, I would be going, that's the worst. That's the worst feature ever. And it really would make it almost unusable. But since you guys do have them zoned out, that you could use them on any zone that you want, like in my bathroom, I couldn't live without it. There's not much bass on those things. On the top end is sort of weird. It's actually not the top end, it's the upper mid range, and I bring that down a little bit. But the point is these guys are not just thinking about your music management, they're thinking about the way your speakers sound to begin with. So if you've got a problem with your left speaker up acoustically, of your left speaker up, or your system up, let's say 6 dB at 120 cycles, which is gonna mess around with your mid-range, you can go to that particular frequency and either drop it yourself, or you can actually even use a mic to help correct your room, to help correct your speakers in your room. Folks, this is huge. This is what pro audio guys do. So let me give you an example. Let's say I'm at the Variety Theater and I've just installed a pair of $500,000 JBL line arrays. Great speakers. But if I left them like that, they would be crappy speakers. Your user experience when you go to a concert to that venue would not be very good because they're not tuned to that venue. So many times people buy, I was just at a friend's house that's got over $100,000 system. And I got to tell you, it was horrible because the speakers weren't doing what they were supposed to in the room. So if they would have just run this program and got the speakers sort of flat or close to flat to begin with, everything they listened to would have been much, much better. But I walked away brokenhearted because I'm going, oh my gosh, my friend just spent all of this money on this huge system. And I got to tell you, I was embarrassed. He thought it was fine, but I mean, I knew what he was missing. But if you're buying audio gear and you are in a regular acoustic room, if you're in your living room, I promise you it wasn't made for sound. So you almost need something like this or some sort of correction, which I know that's a little bit of a touchy subject with a lot of folks, but I don't even care because it's true. Acoustics need to match the speaker. The speaker needs to match the acoustics. The system needs to match the acoustics.
All right.
I think that's it. What have I not brought up or have we not talked about that we need to kind of put a bow on or finish out with, or anything that you would just like to say?
We actually touched on an awful lot. I think we got through most of it.
Well, buddy, I got to tell you, I love what you're doing. I miss you as a friend dearly. I can't wait to see you again the next time. And
absolutely.
Would love to have you guys back on. I think next time we come on, let's do more of the team. Let's get you and Danny and Mike.
What you wish for.
Well, I know Danny real well, so I know exactly what I've asked for. But I know exactly what you're talking about too. He'll start talking and we'll just all be sitting there going, how does this guy know so much? Enno, thank you so much for joining us. I can't tell you how good it was just to see your face.
Thank you so much for having me. This was really fun.
Oh, great. It was great, talking a good bit about Roon and knowing what you guys are up to. We didn't get to a lot of your questions because we never do. I mean, I hope if you're not familiar with the show, then you know that it's basically conversation based, and I want to try to get as much information from the people that we have on the show as we possibly can. We got to some of them, but I do want to let you know that if you've asked a question and it didn't get answered, within the next couple of days, people from the Roon team and myself will be back on answering your questions on the different platforms. Folks that are listening to us now and that are going to be listening to us in the future, we thank you very much for joining us, and thank you very much for being Qobuz fans and or Roon fans. And next week, we'll see you again, and we'll have Kef on. I purposely asked Sujan this week just not to show up because I knew that we were going to be so involved in this conversation that no way we're going to go another 10 minutes. So Sujan's going, I know you need the extra time, so we're going to give you a reprieve from me this time. Although we love Sujan when she comes on. She's going to be on next week, and she'll tell us about the 10 or so albums that'll be coming on being released on Friday. And until then, we're still going to be, you're still going to be on, so hang out for a few minutes. But folks, thank you so much for joining us. We had a great time. Enno, all the best to you, my friend. All the best to Roon, and we're wishing you the very best and look forward to the next time you come on with us.
Cool. Thanks so much, dude.
Take care, buddy.